Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another edition in the series of CEOs in Sales Technology. And I'm joined today by Mark Fershteyn. I'm Fershteyn.
Close enough.
Dude, I was
Close
so
enough.
close. Co-founder, CEO of Recapped. Dude, how close was I there?
90% of the way.
Okay,
Like
all right,
10,
that's
10
close
times better
enough.
than 10 times better than average, I'd say.
Okay. And I'm gonna I'll put your LinkedIn in the show notes so as soon as we get off, people can connect with you.
Cool.
Mark, you're the co-founder CEO of Recapped. How did you get into this, and what made you want to start this company?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, first off. Man, I like to joke that I was just a simple sales guy who had an idea, right?
Mm.
I spent the last, I don't know, 15 years selling everything from SMB to mid-market to enterprise, mostly SaaS. In my last role, I was a VP of sales. And this was just a constant problem that I had every single step of the way. And I never thought I'd have a business. I literally paid some contractors, some money out of my pocket to build this as like a fun little side project. And it really just snowballed from that.
Wow. Okay. So this was something that you felt, to the bone, like you were trying to solve this problem. So you actually had to like
Yeah.
pull money out and solve it. So what was it that you were struggling with, and then how'd you go about, finding people to build it for you?
Yeah. I mean, so for me as a seller, when I first started selling, like I wasn't that good. I almost got put on a PIP my first couple months. And I realized, like I kind of had this kind of come to Jesus moment where I sat down and I was like, okay, I want to be really good at this. I love this profession. I grew up around it. My dad was in it. I wanted to be good, and like my results just weren't matching my outcome. And I sat down and figured out why. And when looked at all of the top reps that were at Citrix, which is where I started at the time, I noticed a couple commonalities. Almost all of them were really, really process driven, and they handled their deals like projects. Whereas me, I was shooting from the hip. Every deal was different. I was kind of just sporadic, right? Which like matches my personality. And I had to really force myself to sit down and kind of be more methodical about how I not only like handle deals, but more importantly, I think solved my customers' issues, right? And kind of like, and what I realized that now in hindsight, I was really just building trust with them, right? I was eliciting that, hey, I'm an expert and I know what I'm doing. And that is what I think kind of made the difference for me. So I went from almost getting put on a PIP to 200, 250% of quota pretty quickly. And I was very lucky in that. And then so when I was a VP of sales, I saw the same problem for my other reps. I used to joke that I would have 45 reps and 90 sales processes. Everyone was kind of struggling with the same issues that I did. And we used to create these mutual action plans that were in spreadsheets, but they were super janky. And it just didn't make sense that, a customer is giving us $100,000 or more, and we're sending them a spreadsheet or email with these like recap emails that are 4 pages long and 18 PDFs and case studies. And it wasn't a good experience, I think, ultimately. And it didn't instill a lot of trust. And so I just had this idea. I kind of jotted down like a mock-up, which funny enough looks very similar to what we have today, and found an outsourced Indian development agency that built it for me for 5-6 grand. I had some money to burn, I guess, and then I ended up showing it to who is now my co-founder, Ujwal, and he's like, "Man, I love this idea. We could have used this at my marketing agency that I worked at, but you got scammed. They did this in 6 months. It probably could have taken me 2 weeks to do it."
Oh,
So he ended up coming on, and we restructured everything and rebuilt it again from the ground up. And by that time, I'd already had 10, 15 people trying to use it, offering to pay me. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't even know this would be a business. I was just looking for a way for my team to start winning some more deals.
wow. Okay. That's amazing. And so what you found I think with a lot of salespeople, it's like we're not necessarily process oriented. Like the vast majority. There's probably like a one,
Yeah.
the top people are super process oriented, and that's why they're the top ones. But the vast
Yeah.
majority, it's like very shoot from the hip, and it's almost like a feeling. And so you saw that and you said, okay, how do I replicate process across for myself first and then across the team?
Yeah. Well,
And then what would that look like?
So I think it was twofold, right? One was the process, but two, I think just fundamentally, I think sales gets a really bad rep, right? Maybe less so now, but definitely 15 years ago. When you talk to people, when you like their perception of salespeople, it's, this like snake oil salesman trying to sell you something that you don't want, right? But that's not sales, right? That's not how sales should be. It should be someone helping to solve a problem for someone, right? Sales should be collaborative. The buyer, I think, should want something just as badly as you want to sell it to them because they have a problem that you fix and you're the best person in the space that helps them fix it. And so, like when I saw that and the process, it kind of just lended itself to this. It originally what we called is really like a collaboration platform, right? And so, what Recap does at the end of the day, it's a collaborative deal room that the buyer can collaborate with the seller and with all of the internal and external stakeholders, really through the first call, all the way through delivery, all the way through renewals, literally the entire life cycle. And it's really just the goal is to make everyone's lives easier. Right. For leadership, they have one link that they can go into. They don't have to chase a rep figuring out what's going on. Reps, they have a single place that they can go. They don't have to try and figure out, did I send that PDF to them? What are the next steps on this deal? Did I update my medic fields in Salesforce? And then the buyer has one link that they can also go into. So as they're selling internally and having those conversations, because they're not professional salespeople, they're trying to do their job. They just want this tool that's going to help them make their lives easier. This will help enable them. And that's really kind of how it came to be.
Mm. And when you say digital sales room, you picture, people coming into a room working together on something in real time, but now it's digital. So
Exactly.
it's online and you can see everything everyone that's involved in the deal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about it, right? Marketers, they create landing pages for their campaigns, right? Why shouldn't sales create almost landing pages for their deals that are custom fit for the buyer, for the prospect, right? But they're not going to use Wix or Webflow or whatever else or Squarespace, right? They need something that helps them actually do it in a really easy job. It's not putting a square peg in a round hole. It's actually something that is made just for the way that they work. And more importantly, how the buyers purchase.
Yeah, and then also you mentioned that a champion on a deal or someone who's interested in working with you, they don't really have the ability to sell internally. Usually, they've got like a few
Yeah.
emails and some attachments and stuff like that, but there's really not a lot of support for them talking about you when you're not in the room, for example.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure anybody in sales that's listening to this will understand that very few deals right now are getting done without a CFO approval, right? We're seeing this ourselves, even with $7,000 deals. We're having to go to the C-suite to get approvals for, right? So I can only imagine what's going on in the enterprise and mid-market space. Um,
Mm.
so not only do you have that, but you also have the complexity. So you need to not only build a fundamental business case, but you also need the cost of an action. You need the return on investment. You need proof, right? Because ultimately, the number one enemy that you're fighting against, it's not the competitor, it's status quo.
Yeah.
Right? Now, obviously, competitors come up a lot, but you really need to make it so that it's as risk-free as possible and as net positive as possible. Because the other thing we're also doing is, as sellers, we're not competing for just our competitor. You're competing with all budget spent. Right? And yes, this might be able to bring you $1.50 on $1, but maybe something else can bring them $3 on $1 spent. That's what's going to get the purchase. That's what's going to get the focus. And so it's really all around, I think, efficient execution.
Yep. And it's interesting that you say that because some research I was just looking at before the call said that most deals are not lost necessarily to the competition or to it's just inaction. It's like it's ridiculous, right? Especially right now in this environment that it's, upwards of 60-70% of the deals in the
Yeah.
survey that I was looking at, it's inaction, and so you have a great call, you're rallying all this support and stuff like that, and then people just go dark because they
Yeah.
can't get support or they just really weren't able
Well,
to.
everyone's, I
Yeah,
mean, there's a couple of things going on, right? Everyone's really worried about getting fired, right? If they make the wrong purchase, if they negatively impact their burn rate,
yeah,
that's not a good look right now. right? In a zero interest rate phenomenon that we had for the last couple of years, yeah, you can buy whatever, and if it doesn't get used, whatever, that's not the case anymore. So you have really kind of these high stakes, but you also have this I don't know, just fear, I think, ultimately that you have to overcome. And the change management is it's a real pain in the ass, right? Like you really need to corral a lot of people. You need to get them to make a change. And it can't be just 1x better. It has to be 10, 50 times better than what they're doing today. Otherwise, why change?
Yeah, and it's hard, internally to be that champion and try to rally support for people, especially as you work at a bigger company.
Oh yeah.
And you don't want to stick your neck out, especially in this kind of environment that we're having right now. It's got to work, So it must be really, really difficult. And so if you look at it from two different angles, what's the experience like using Recap for a sales rep slash, a sales manager versus the experience over on the potential buyer side? What do they see?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's actually pretty similar. So let's say I create a digital sales room and it has the business case, it has the resources like case studies and testimonials. It also has a mutual action plan, which is really kind of like our next steps that we're doing. All of that stuff, probably 80% of it, I can make it exposed and client facing. So they can go in and see everything that they need to. And as they're going in and looking at it, I'm getting analytics and real-time data on who's looking at what they're looking at, why they're looking at it, right? We're able to make some of those inferences. And then maybe there's really internal aspects of it that you don't want to show to your customer. CRM fields, medic, deal qualification, maybe a POC checklist, internal steps that the client doesn't need to do, right? Because for every one client facing step, there's probably 3 or 4 internal steps that you have to do to corral them, right? Build a business case, build a proposal, make sure their product usage on the POC is going well. So being able to drive that. And so first and foremost, I think from day one, we really spent a lot of time making this as seller and buyer beneficial as possible. Because when I was a VP of sales, I would buy so many tools that had all these pretty dashboards and graphs and exports, and my reps never used them. Right? And I was just dumping money down the drain. So from day one, we kind of said, okay, how do we make it so that the reps are going to be the ones that are begging for this? So then when we go to leadership, it becomes an easy conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the workflows, a lot of the making their lives easier, I think is really what we try to do. And the results kind of speak for themselves. So over the last year and a half, we've really pivoted the entire business. We went from top down only to releasing a PLG, bottoms up, free trial, freemium product. And now 80% of our pipeline is generated by reps.
Nice. Okay. So it's interesting that they're becoming sort of the champion for you
Yeah.
internally. So they go in, they use this, they have a lot of success, and then they go up to their manager and say, "Hey, if we had more of this, then we could potentially, sell more deals."
Yeah. So we had one customer recently. We had 17 reps paying out of pocket. They were all Venmoing one champion every single month.
Oh,
And
wow.
that champion, we were charging the champion. So this was like $800, $900, whatever that we're charging this one person, like this significant amount of homework that they had to do. And the CRO and the security team came in and went like, hey, we never approved for this. We need to really figure out what's going on. But also on the flip side, what the hell are you guys doing over there? Because I've never seen my reps pay for anything, and they're
Yeah.
paying almost $100 a month out of pocket for this. And so that actually ended up spurring a really great conversation. Now they're a full customer. Now we're working on rolling out to their North America team. But these are the kind of conversations we're starting to have because it's like just spreading organically, which is, as a seller, I'm just so jealous because I wish I would have had this when I was a seller.
Totally. I mean, those guys were making more money, right? Because they were using this, so that's how they could afford to buy it.
Exactly.
But it's got to be like I can just imagine the security guy's head exploding because it's like not only. I mean, there's a lot of tools that reps can plug in without telling anybody and just
Yeah.
secretly kind of use this thing. But for you as the business owner, for Recap, it's really cool that, instead of you having to cold call a CRO 500 times so that they listen to you, it's one of the reps inside saying that this thing is amazing. We got to get this.
Yeah. Well, and for us, we've been very lucky because so much of what we do in terms of getting Recap to sell is this exact same process that our customers are going through with their
Mhm.
customers, right? So we're arming our AEs that are trialing and championing our product with business cases that they could take to leadership. Same exact thing that their customers are doing. We're having to multi-thread. We're having to create next steps. We're having to track engagement. So all of these things just kind of naturally feed the product roadmap. Where it's, it's very
Yeah.
meta. Like when we demo the product, it's so funny. It's like, hey, David, I saw that you clicked on this and this and this so many times, right? What if your buyers could see the same access?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Here's
That
behind the
is
scenes. Yeah,
That's
it's fun.
amazing. Yeah, because I mean you're out selling, so you're using Recap to sell Recap, and it becomes this like upward
Yeah,
upward spiral of goodness. And I bet that you get a lot of good ideas from using it yourself. You're like, wow, it would be
yeah.
cool if we had this. Well, actually, I can just call the guy and update this right now. That's
Yeah,
very cool.
it's funny. About half of our features came from us and
Yeah.
then just using it in our vision, about 60%. And then 40-50% came from directly from customer feedback. But almost
Okay.
always, whenever we get feedback, we're like, yep, that's literally the next thing we're working on because we're also struggling with that. And
We saw that too.
yeah,
Okay, so now flip it around. So say you're the potential buyer, and I'm a sales rep. I just got off a call with a potential buyer, and I want to get them onboarded into the digital sales room. What is it? What does that experience look like?
yeah. So I think it's important we take a step back first, right? Why is this for a buyer? Why is this important? Well, if you look at Gardner, if you look at Forrester, if you look at your research, I mean, literally anything that you're seeing out there, if you think selling is hard in this economy, go try and buy something, right? Not only like all the reasons that we talked about earlier. There's that infamous graphic from Gardner where the buyer journey, right? It's a complete shit show. There are now the average mid-market deal has double-digit stakeholders that are required to approve. Right? It was just at 7 a couple of years ago. It's almost doubled. And we're seeing for us in our deals, we're seeing more than about 2.5 times more stakeholders in Recap digital sales rooms than the information that's in their Salesforce. So they may think there's only 8 people involved. We have 12 or 13 that are actually looking at it. So you have all these secret personas and influencers that are probably killing your deals behind the scenes that you don't know about. And if you don't know about them, how do you engage them? Right. So if you're a buyer,
Okay.
we always want to make it as easy as possible for them to engage. We don't ever want to assign them homework because let's be honest, they barely answer our phone calls. They barely read our emails, right? They're busy doing their own job. They don't give a damn, right? People are just trying to do their job and do it well. That's it. And so from that lens, we always make it really easy for them to get up and running. Over 70% of all prospects or buyers in this case engage with the platform. And once they do, the repeat engagement is over 90%, right? Because if you put yourself in their shoes, which would you rather prefer, right? You need a solution. You need to go propose it to your boss or legal or IT or the board or whoever. You need to go dig through emails and figure out where was that PDF and case study and everything else.
Mhm.
Or you have a single thing, a single page that's bookmarked that everything is laid out. And you know that if you have any questions, you can just tag it and it'll get uploaded right in there. Right. Hey, David, can I get a recent case study for an industry like ours? Sure, here it is. And that experience and that friction, I think that's probably the most important thing you can focus on today.
Mhm. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so it's almost like the buzzword is kind of buyer enablement. I've heard that
Yeah.
a few times, but what does that actually mean? Because you can't, you know, you can't like train people that work at a different company on how to sell your product. You just have to make something like this where they have all the information and they know everything that's going on, so when they're ready, they can go pitch it.
Exactly. Right. I mean, 90% of the time you're not in the room. So you may demo the product and everything for an hour, and then they probably remember 2 minutes worth of what you said.
Mhm.
Right. So instead, if you can have the platform pitch for you when you're not in the room, that's how you get success.
Interesting. And one thing I saw happen a lot was sales technology companies selling to other technology companies, and this is like a couple of years ago. It seems like now we're trying to get out of just selling to other tech companies
Yeah.
and go to other verticals and stuff like that. Do you find that it's possible to use this with companies that aren't necessarily tech savvy? And they're just sort of getting into digital sales rooms. Like they might not even know what a
Yeah.
digital sales room means. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I think for us, you know, where I think we do differently than, so I'll back up. We were, as far as I know, we were the first player in the space. We did this about 5.5, 6 years ago. Now there's probably, I don't know, 15, 20 different vendors. Everyone has their own unique spin on it. I think competition is amazing. It pushes everyone to get better, and the pie is big enough for everybody. So I'm not worried about that. But what I think we do differently is we really focus on the execution in the sales process. And I think the buyer enablement and engagement is really kind of the cherry on top. So it's probably 80% focused on internal execution, 20% on like buyer enablement. Because you can't, I don't think we should rely on someone externally to do our job for us, right?
Mhm.
As sellers, we're the ones that should be guiding, we should be enabling, we should be taking control and really offering that incredible experience. And I think that's where I think a lot of teams kind of mess up, right? They throw it out in the ether and kind of hope and think, oh, okay, like if my buyer engages and if they do this and if they do that, then great. But as sellers, we really need to be taking control and guiding. And I think that's, if I was building a team today, that's what I would focus on.
Got it. And it just reminds me when I was in the corporate world that we would talk about Medic, and it would be Medic, for example, would be built into the pipeline status and the
Yep.
opportunity stage. And there might be like a couple of trainings, and an external trainer might come in and do like a day at the SKO, for example. But then it was really thrown out to the salespeople that like, hey, you need to follow Medic. Okay, I'll see you next week at the pipeline meeting. I mean, that was pretty much it. So, and I know when you showed me, there's very specific, guidelines to make sure that one, people know what Medic is, and then number two,
Yeah.
that you're like following it during the deal, it seems.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny, so going back to your last question, one of our most successful customers, they actually sell to general contractors, which means, like literally the plumbers and the painters out in the field that are doing, um, handiwork ultimately. And, when we first got them up and running, we were really worried. We're like, you're probably going to get very little engagement on this because, they're on their cell phones. These aren't the most tech savvy people. Historically, they haven't been, very open to like going in and collaborating. Come to find out, they actually are right there with everybody else's in the average, 70% engagement. So I think to that point, it's really just like it doesn't matter what space it's in, as long as there's back and forth and complexity ultimately.
Hmm. Yeah, which is any deal, over a certain size. There's multiple people
Yeah.
involved and stuff like that. And I mean, this is just a technical question, but can you use Recapped on your phone, or do you have to be at the desktop?
If you are viewing it from the prospect side, you can absolutely use it on your phone. If you're
Mhm.
editing or creating, it's not optimized for phone today, but iPad's not a problem.
So it's got it. So it's from your perspective, if you were working with customers, obviously you are at Recapped,
Yeah.
you could control everything from your desktop, but then they could be out looking
Yep.
at stuff and commenting on their phones.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll
So
build a mobile phone later, but most of our customers are at their desktop or at their iPad, and compared to like some of the AI features and everything else that we're working on, it's
yeah.
just lower priority.
Yeah, and it's just it's interesting because right now people are trying to figure out how to go out to all these other industries that are out there, because there's these multi-billion trillion dollar industries that are essentially untouched by sales technology, and there's so much potential,
Yeah.
especially because since we're in like a slump in the tech industry. It's interesting, but and then a lot of really niche, like vertical SaaS companies pop up. That's like, the CRM for pharmaceutical, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And they're really, really good at that one slice. So it's just interesting to see how companies are trying to crack that.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a customer recently that because we're in such a bubble, I feel like in SaaS, right? We've got our sales engagement platforms, we've got our conversational intelligence, we've got all these different tools. And then you talk to someone in like that manufacturing space, and they're like, "Oh, we just got on Salesforce.
Yeah.
We're very excited about that. Feel like
We
we're ahead of
laugh,
the
but
curve here, right?"
yeah.
Uh, or like these other industries where, you know, for them, every small advantage like that is such a huge competitive advantage because their
Mhm.
competitors aren't doing anything like this. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. I mean, I think to de-risk as CEO, like we're always thinking about what industries can we get into that are less populated and less competitive.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I mean, it's this is definitely the wave of the future is online collaboration with I mean, it just makes perfect sense, especially after COVID. That, like, you've got to be able to collaborate
Yeah.
online, and we should be able to see what people are doing and how interested they are. And the digital sales room creates that. Where do you see this going? Like, what's on the horizon for you, and or what are you most excited about with developing this?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. In general, I think around the sales space, because I think that's a much bigger wave than what we're doing is, and we're simply just riding the wave, is you have this kind of like B2C-ification of B2B. All right. So what people are doing on B2C 5 years ago is what we're probably now only starting to see on B2B. And that's reducing friction. It's trying to cut time to value in half. It's really just focusing on, hey, I don't even want to talk to a salesperson until I'm 80% of the way through evaluation. So I think collaborative selling and digital sales rooms are a really big part of that because they enable you to tailor your sales process to your buyer's buyer journey. Right? Normally, it's kind of just very much one way. Now, I think the power has really shifted, and we're in this kind of buyer led economy. So for us, everything we do, I think the North Star of how we think about things is the buyer experience. I think buyer enablement is a part of that. I think sales process is a part of that. I think visibility and analytics are a part of that. But ultimately, if you're not providing a Michelin star experience, someone else in your space will, and they're going to win that business. Because very rarely do I think it actually comes down to the features or the check boxes or whatever. It's how did I make this person feel? And do I think that they have their shit together? And are they experts in what they're doing? And if so, I'm willing to pay them a lot of money and will instill a lot of trust and rave about them to everyone else like I do at a Michelin star restaurant. So I think
Yeah.
that's like
Wow.
that's
Okay.
that's the wave, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting because we are so used to the Amazon, experience with everything. It's
Yes.
find exactly what you need, you don't talk to anybody, you click a click, it's at your door the next day. And
Yeah.
then we go to work or, work in our closet in our house, and it's a completely different experience. Obviously, if you're like bringing in a deal that's going to be $10,000 plus, it's not going to be click done. But people want that same experience to be flawless, and so I completely see what you're saying.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I love what you just said, right? Because if you think about all of the big disruptions in the past, 20 years, right? We've got Netflix, Salesforce, Amazon. What did they do? They all cut down the distribution and they focused on experience. And that's what was revolutionary, in my opinion. Obviously, the tech and everything else is fantastic, but that was the big leap. And so, if we could do the same thing for your buyers, I think it's a magic unlock.
Yeah, it's funny because this is kind of off topic, but I was in this discussion about how B2C and B2B are kind of merging, and people were talking about how there's all these intent signals out there that can be harnessed for an SDR or an inside salesperson to have more relevant conversations with their
Yeah.
prospects. And I started to look at it and I go, we're basically talking about retargeting.
Yeah.
like,
With lead
like, you know,
scoring thrown in, right?
yeah, I mean, we're just throwing
Yeah.
in an SDR, and it's yeah, it's like the world is sort of collapsing B2C with
Yeah.
B2B in a lot of ways. So interesting. Well, Mark, I can't wait to try it. It sounds like
Yeah.
an amazing product, and
Thank you.
if people want to jump on, maybe start charging it on their own Venmo. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just mark at recap.io. You can find me on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Every piece of clothing I own and the sign behind me shows the name. So
Nice.
I
Hey, all
my
right.
girlfriend, there you go. My girlfriend for the first like 4 months was like, "Do you like? I mean this in a nice way, but do you own any other clothing aside from this hoodie that you seem to have 80 pairs of?" Uh, so if I can help in any
Oh my
way,
God.
more than happy to get people set up for free. Really just help be a resource. Like even outside of recap, like I love, I kind of became obsessed with the process and the science of sales because I think so much of it, I think 80, 90% of it is science. And I think almost anyone can be truly fantastic at it. They just need to put the right rails in place, right? So like if you do sales on rails is what we call it. But I love this stuff and just from like one seller to another, if I can help anyone elevate their craft or just win more deals, right? Solve problems for their customers. Like I love this kind of stuff. So let me know. More than happy to jump on a call, help in any way. We've got a bunch of free resources and templates I can send people. But yeah, hopefully talk to somebody.
Yeah, I mean that's a great offer because I feel like there's a lot of energy in sales and there's a lot of people who really, really want to be successful, but they're kind of dissipating the energy just like we all, going from thing to thing without putting the sales on rails, and really focusing that energy. So I think you'll get some people reaching out, Mark.
Oh, I appreciate it. And this was great. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you.